I am Kim Aung-soo. I'm going to chair this morning's section. Warmly welcome to everyone. Personally, I am very happy to revisit the Bangalore 2012. I had a chance to attend management course as RIMB. Now, 2015, I had another opportunity to visit here again. Just now we have the divided two groups in this morning section. There will be the three speakers in each group. The first, the Dr. Pankaj K. He is going to talk about the ASEAN Myanmar. ASEAN Myanmar is a very interesting topic because the ASEAN is playing very important role in the regions, and I believe Dr. Pankaj talk will be an interesting topic. He will give us very interesting insight and his experience on the topics. May I request Mr. Dr. Pankaj to make your presentation.
Am I audible? Okay, fair enough. Good morning. Let's start the morning with a joke. It's my temptation to really start with a joke. It goes something like this, that a professor of philosophy asked a student that you have failed. Tell me what were the reasons? He said, forget about everything, professor. Let me ask you 3 questions. He said, fair enough. Good. Ask me. I am the scholar of philosophy. I will definitely tell you whatever the question says. He said, sir, can you tell me these 3 questions answers to this? Then I will recognize myself as a failed student. Otherwise, you will give me A+ grade. That was a challenge to the ego of the professor. The student asked, what is legal but irrational? Second, what is illegal but rational? And third, which is both illegal and irrational? The professor couldn't answer the question. He surrendered and gave that failed boy A+. A real severe dealt to his blow. The professor reached out to his best brilliant student and asked, can you tell me the answers of these 3 questions? He said, sir, it's very simple. He said, okay, tell me, enlighten me. He said, what is legal and irrational is you. He said, why? He said, it is illegal for you, a professor of 65-year-old person, to marry a 30-year-old woman. But it's irrational. He said, fair enough. He said, the second, what is illegal and rational? He said, your wife is 30 years old. She loves a young boy, which is illegal but rational. He said, fair enough. He said, what is illegal and irrational? He said, the boy who loves your wife, you gave him A+, which is both illegal and irrational. Okay, now coming to the core question, ASEAN and Myanmar. There has been some issues which have always enlightened the discourse with regard to ASEAN interaction with Myanmar. Usually whenever we talk about ASEAN, is it a forum which can really influence internal dynamics of any country? Many people say, as the mandate of most of the Southern Asian countries, regional multilateral organizations, be it the SAARC or ASEAN, the non-interference in the domestic politics of any countries is a simple no-no for these multilateral institutions. And this serves the purpose because many of the institutions within the Southern Asia, including South and Southeast Asia, are not as dynamic to take criticism with regard to their internal politics. In case of Southeast Asia, there were 3 major pillars of any nation building, which included military also. So whenever the colonial mindset, colonial phase really ended, these militaries were seen as a necessary evil for building the nation because of the ethnic and religious fissures which were really existent in all these countries. You take the case of Myanmar, you take the case of Philippines, you take the case of Indonesia. However, in any regional setting, there are 2 important elements to coerce any country to really shift towards democracy. These 2 are, first, there are multilateral institutions in which democracy is a prerequisite for membership, which is missing in the case of ASEAN. Second, there are regional effects, something like Arab Spring, which brings about a contagion effect in any country to bring about change in its institutions, which again is missing in the case of Southeast Asia. Given these issues, ASEAN was nudging Myanmar in a way, but was not taking a very proactive action while engaging with Myanmar because of certain issues which were I deliberated upon. Now, in case when I talk about the military as a necessary evil for nation building, you say there is a compromise formula which exists between military and those different ethnic groups and subnational identities which are existing in any new nation state. And Arendt Liebhardt really suggests this is a consocial democracy or a form of power sharing between different ethnic groups as a method for avoiding ethnic conflict and achieving political stability. In other words, a certain type of democracy can still be applied to multi-ethnic society without resorting to authoritarian rule. For military rulers, however, the widespread association of democracy with civilian supremacy has created a particular crisis of legitimacy. Now, also you need to see what exactly were the basic benchmarks within the ASEAN and Myanmar to really engage each other in due course of time. If you see the ASEAN when it was formed, it was seen more of an anti-communist bloc, to which Myanmar said, I am not really going to get into the bandwagon because I will be spoiling my relationships with China. Further, Myanmar was also involved in the non-aligned movement, and therefore it was really apprehensive of the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, which was joined by many of the Southeast Asian countries. Also, the trajectory of the ASEAN for the 2 or 3 decades since its formation was primarily to discuss the economic growth and develop the agenda for more congenial environment, economic environment, investment and other issues. If 1997 economic crisis would not have happened, the tectonic changes in the ASEAN thinking and its cohesive formation would not have taken shape, because Myanmar used to draw heavily from what exactly Indonesia was really experimenting in its larger scheme of things. 1997, you've seen Indonesia really trying to really get into the more scheme of evolving a better growth, which was not completely guided democracy, and Myanmar used to take examples from that. So what exactly transpired to make Myanmar as a member of ASEAN, and whether these whole issue of engaging Myanmar really paid dividends for the ASEAN in the long run. Now, if you see in the initial stages, 1997, there was a lot of resistance from EU, US to really not to engage Myanmar into the ASEAN forum. But the resistance was refuted as well as to a large extent was many of the leaders didn't succumb to it, including Mahathir Mohamad, who was very adamant on including Myanmar into the larger ASEAN multilateral forum, because he said we are a different sort of a setup and we can't really import that sort of Western democratic norms to abhor or bar any country from the membership. But however, subsequently, the issues which were raised with regard to really, easing out of the Myanmar in terms of economic liberalization, more political participation, and all those things were very incremental, but it sufficed ASEAN to engage Myanmar in a big way. Subsequently, when there was an issue of Myanmar gaining the chair in ASEAN, there were certain pressures which were exerted on the Myanmar not to get it because of certain incidents which have happened. Myanmar also, because of cajoling and some suggestions from the ASEAN, said that it needs to really bring about the political reforms and work on national reconciliation, and it forfeited that ASEAN membership. Many of the scholars say that this forfeiture of the membership was not very well in terms of its incremental progression towards democracy, because if it would have gained the chair at that point of time, it would have somehow compelled the Myanmar military junta to really bring about changes in a more sustained manner. However, in due course of time, what exactly has happened, that relationship between the China, Burma and ASEAN developed in a way that they become much more cohesive in terms of investment, trade and growth. And this facilitated Myanmar to get more integrated into the ASEAN framework of things. However, in terms of Myanmar's own thinking towards ASEAN, the first and foremost issue which it tried to address was it said it is willing to sign the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, which was the first benchmark for any country to either become a dialogue partner or membership of ASEAN, which was which facilitated its more better integration with the organization. Now, if you say that whether ASEAN in a way forced Myanmar to bring about changes in its governance structures, I will take certain very cautious words to it, that Myanmar wasn't coerced, it was just given a nudge to really make certain reforms, and these reforms were in 4 major areas. First, open up a meaningful dialogue with Daw Aung San Suu Kyi and the National League of Democracy to a certain extent, which has been achieved. Make full use of the good offices of the UN Secretary General, primarily Professor Gambari, who visited Myanmar a number of times to really make Myanmar incremental changes, and lift restrictions on Daw Aung San Suu Kyi, which again was lifted, and release of political prisoners, which a substantial number of them have already been released. And the issue of work towards peaceful transition of democracy, which again 2015 elections will mark whether there has been some changes or not, on address the economic difficulties faced by the people of Myanmar. If you see the trajectory of the investment and trade between ASEAN and Myanmar, it is the second largest trading partner as a grouping for Myanmar, as well as investment in the Myanmar. How the ASEAN as an institution worked towards building certain bridges between EU and US is a matter which should be stressed and which should be studied very carefully. If you see that resistance with regard to EU and US letting the Myanmar take the chairmanship, the resistance in 2004, 2005, much more stern. But however, in due course of time, when 2014, Myanmar took the chairmanship, the resistance was much more less and was much more accommodative towards the Myanmar. This also gave a leeway to Myanmar to get into the Asia-Europe meeting, which is known as ASEAN, which includes EU, ASEAN members, and which is a relatively large grouping. And this ASEAN dialogue addresses political, economic, and cultural issues with the respect and equal partnership. It's not only that ASEAN really calibrated its moves to Myanmar, but it also really, in a way, toned down the resistance towards Myanmar whenever there were certain international NGOs and other groups which were raising the issue of human rights, as well as certain political liberal values which needs to be incorporated into the Myanmar superstructure. And these resistance came from a number of EU groups, which included Red Cross, Amnesty Internationals, and all those things. They have given representations to leaders of the EU at that time, France or Germany at times, and which France and Germany, which were much more open to really integrating Myanmar into larger scheme of thing, international body, really facilitated Myanmar into a larger global community. Now, if you see the number of changes that the Myanmar has brought about since 2010 onwards, when ASEAN was seen as a more vocal, giving a right kind of direction to the Myanmar, you see that Myanmar has made changes to its foreign domestic investment. It has made changes to its mining liberalization, as well as telecommunication sectors, and all those things. It's not that ASEAN has not even made references with regard to the institutions and the institutional mechanism in Myanmar. It has made such certain remarks way back in 2004, again in 2007. So it's something very calibrated moves towards the Myanmar, which has done a lot of good to Myanmar. In fact, if you see that Myanmar's ASEAN chairmanship the last year, the issues were raised that whether Myanmar will go the Cambodia way, in which the ASEAN communique wasn't released, and it was seen that it has become a Chinese outhouse when communique wasn't released. Myanmar made two very major landmark, what is called projections to its outlook. It raised the issue of South China Sea, which is laudable, because many people said that China will again manipulate Myanmar not to do this. And second, it really instituted the national human rights body, which can address those issues even though in a very calibrated, incremental manner. So these two issues have really shown that Myanmar does have the intention to get back to its roots, to the larger international community. However, Myanmar, you need to understand from the point of view of ASEAN as well as from the India, that Myanmar's governance structures are too fragile, too nascent, and demanding too much from them might really lead to the crumbling of the institution. And there is always an issue that whether the military junta which always sees that these international NGOs like Amnesty International and all those things might charge these military junta retrospectively in terms of the war crimes or whatever they have done to the civilian population. That sort of calibrated move is really required. Now coming to why is this, this marriage between ASEAN and Myanmar is important for India, because if I don't refer to India, it will be too short. There are 4 major issues which are of interest for us, given the fact that ASEAN and Myanmar have a very complex sort of equation. First, ASEAN energy grid is not yet complete. Once it reaches to the Myanmar, it is definitely going to integrate to the South Asian grid and create a bigger network of energy grid, which might give a future perspective to our energy requirement in the long run. The issue why this whole energy grid is important, because none of the countries are too big mass producers of oil and gas. The thing is that India has the biggest refining capacities, which can be tapped in the long run, and many of the refining capabilities of India is underutilized. Second is ASEAN defense industry. Even though that ASEAN defense industry is still in a very nascent stages, but given the fact that Myanmar has the resources, the land, to really build up an ancillary unit to that larger network of defense industry, then India will also need to integrate its northeast with that larger defense industry, so that the more integrated global value chain could be created in terms of defense products within the Southern Asia. The third is ASEAN connectivity network. I'm particularly very interested in the fiber optic networks. If you see that national fiber optic network, we are really getting the knowledge network grid within the South Asia, and we want to integrate to the larger regions so that the knowledge grid can be really formulated. In case that sort of grid is also being envisaged in the Southeast Asia, we will create one of the biggest knowledge grids in the whole region. And last, Myanmar does have SEZs which are to a large extent valuable for us, be it the case of Thilewa or in and around Sitwe, because that will integrate India into the larger global regional value chain, which India has been completely missing because we are somehow not integrated into that regional value chain. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pankaj, for your very comprehensive talk, and really inspiring. Especially you're trying to cover a wide range of the issue on Myanmar and ASEAN, the relation. Yes, I agree. India continuously study the relation, the Myanmar and ASEAN. Also, the relationship between Myanmar and India is very much important. The first Prime Minister, Mr. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru said, and I quote, as in the past, so in the future, the people of India will stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of Burma, and whether we have to share good fortune or ill fortune, we shall share it together. My personal assessment is that we will have the good fortune for being the member of the ASEAN. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
The second speaker, Dr. Porn Kwan from the Thammasat University. She is going to talk on Thailand engagement with Myanmar. Does economic interest prevail? May I request Dr. Porn to make your presentation? Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me here. My presentation will be on Thailand's engagement with Myanmar, which we can see that it has fluctuated a lot through through several decades. So here is the summary of the past formal modern day relations between Thailand and Myanmar. So I put like the signals at the end of each sentences to show the fluctuations of Thailand and Myanmar's relation. So we start off with quite a good relationship after the independence of Myanmar in 1950s, we had established a relationship, a formal relationship, official relationship between the two countries. And that has been on a good track with UNUs visiting Thailand, having relationship with the monarchy in Thailand, and we had the monarchs visiting Myanmar in returns. So, however, we can see the fluctuations in between. Sometimes it's going up, the relationship is going, it's better. Sometimes it's going down. It's something obstructs the relationship between the two countries. However, we can see that after the democratic transition, the political transition in Myanmar, the relationship between the two countries have been on a good mode. But before I go on to the details of the relationship between Thailand and Myanmar nowadays, I want to point out to the factors that influence Thailand's foreign policy towards Myanmar. That actually factors into the fluctuations of the relationship between the two countries. The direct factors that I can point out here is the first thing, the great powers' foreign policy towards Myanmar and international politics. Thailand is a very small country. Sometimes we have to play our bandwagon to bigger countries, especially during the Cold War. We had a very firm stance that we support the United States side, and we tries to So we had a very firm stance during the Cold War, and that actually factored in a decreasing relationship between Thailand, deteriorating relationship between Thailand and Myanmar, because we saw Myanmar as a potential communist country that could give a domino effect into Thailand. And during that time, because of the Western countries' stance against Myanmar and against communist countries, we decided to support ethnic minorities' army along the border, and that actually angered the Burmese, the Myanmar government. So that one showed you that Western countries' politics and foreign policy towards Myanmar actually affected Thailand's foreign policy towards Myanmar as well, to some certain extent. The influence of Western countries into Thailand's foreign policy towards Myanmar start decreasing after the end of the Cold War. Doesn't mean it's totally eliminated. It's decreasing, but we still follows Western stance to some certain extent. And that actually relies on the second factor, which is domestic politics and actors involved in the policy process. There are basically three groups that switchingly govern Thailand. The first is the army, the military. After the coup d'etat, the army will take over and run the country. This is the situation we are in right now, and this is not the first time, because we have gone through this process all along. The second group that has governed Thailand is the bureaucrat government. So basically the government that relies heavily on bureaucratic processes and bureaucrats. So these people usually are Western educated. They follow the Western stance. They don't really, sometimes do not really have a strong presence in Thailand. They don't really deliver, not necessarily deliver well on Thai people. They have to gain legitimacy, though, by accepting the Western stance, because normally during this bureaucrat governments, the economic performance of Thailand is not that great. So the only way to gain legitimacy in the international politics is to accept the Western stance and follow whatever the Western countries and the great majors, powers, policies towards Myanmar is. So that actually showed you Thailand's policy towards Myanmar sometime a little after 1988 incidents, and also sometimes after 2007 incidents that Thai government shifted the stance of engaging with Myanmar to blocking the trade and having a very strong stance commenting on democracy, development, human rights issues in Burma. That is because the Thai government also needs to seek global legitimacy by doing something else instead of increasing or improving economic performance. So the third group that has governed Thailand in the past, well, decades, has been the government that is dominated by business groups. And these governments tend to care more about business opportunities inside Burma, inside Myanmar. And with these government governing Thailand, ties between Burma, Myanmar and Thailand tend to be on good terms. Basically because the business has pushed forward their presence in Myanmar, going forward and investing and improving infrastructure in Myanmar. So those are direct factors influencing Thailand's foreign policy towards Myanmar. There is one indirect factor that influenced Thailand's and foreign policy towards Myanmar, though, which is the Thais' attitude towards Myanmar and its people. It is very funny that mostly Thai's attitude towards Myanmar is pretty negative. On the other side, from the study I have done before and researched before, it showed that the Burmese and Myanmar people's attitude toward Thais are on the other side. They don't have a very negative attitude towards Thais, though. It's just because this attitude has been presented through movies, dramas, series, books, and several media that showed a very bad behavior of Myanmar, and because of the historiography of Thai histories and historians in the past that try to show that Myanmar tried to capture Thailand in the past, like hundreds of years ago, which actually factored in how Thai people views Myanmar nowadays. But I would come to a conclusion at the end if this indirect factor of Thai's attitude towards Myanmar actually factor in any Thailand's foreign policy towards Myanmar. So here is the Thailand's foreign policy towards Myanmar since Myanmar's democratic transition. I'm not going to go that far back before that, so I would like to start since 2010, after the political transition happened in Myanmar. So, as I said before Yingluck government, Thailand's policy towards Myanmar is pretty negative. Not because one thing was because of the 2007 accident, the Saffron Revolution in Myanmar. And Surin Pitsuwan, the ASEAN Secretariat at that time, came up with this flexible engagement, which opened a way for ASEAN countries, including Thailand, to push a very strong stance on commenting on human rights and political issues in Myanmar. That resulted in the closing of the Masa trading post, the biggest trading post between Myanmar and Thailand. When Yingluck government came into power, she reopened the Masa trading post again, and we saw the rise of trading of trades between Thailand and Myanmar after that time. Another thing that was done during her term was the Dawei project, and she also had a lot of policies towards Myanmar, basically tailoring into business opportunities and business interests that Thai investors could go in and invest in Myanmar. Two of those are construction of connecting highways from Tak, the western province of Thailand, to Malamyang, and Three Pagodas Pass to Malamyang. Those were the two highways that were planned under the Yingluck government. The last one was the plan to open special economic zones along the Thai borders. These covered several borders, though, not only border with Myanmar, but border with other neighboring countries as well. But the only special economic zone that was done up until now was the special economic zone at Masot, bordering with Myawaddy in Myanmar. And that saw a very great opportunity for investors of both countries to do the cross-border investment. So here is the Way project. Under the Yingluck government, Thailand, this Thai company was awarded a full concession, Italian Thai Development. It came to a halt because it could not accumulate sufficient fund to fund the project. So in 2012, the Thai government took over the project. So say no more private investment into this program. The Thai government would fully go in, cooperate with the Myanmar government, and improve and develop this project. It didn't go well because Thailand could not attract investors as well. But under this current military government, the junta, we saw a way forward for this project. So these are the connecting highways I told you earlier. It has been established though, these two highways. The problem was that it's still one-way road, one-way street. So meaning that today you allow like the road, the cars to go to Mawlamyang, the other day you allow the car to go to Thailand's border. So it's switchingly this way. They are expanding the roads so that they could have a two-way transportation between the two countries. So this is the special economic zones I was talking about. The Yingluck government launched a study group to study the potentials of the border towns who can be a special economic zone. But the most tangible plan was Masot Special Economic Zone, which right now saw a lot of progress that the Thai investors already went in Myanmar and invest along the road that would go from Masot to Mawlamyang, and they saw a great potential of having Myanmar as another destination of tourism from Thailand to Myanmar. All right, so come to the current situation under Prayut's government. So I should mention this earlier because Prayut government is a junta, military. So it has a good relationship with her current Myanmar government because of the individual personal relationship when they were in the armies together. So basically they try to push forward a lot of good policies, engagement policies with Myanmar. And also because you might not think about this, but Thai army has a lot of economic interest in Myanmar since the past because the army was awarded concession of logging and other kind of natural resources in the past, even during the Cold War. So they developed a very close ties together, and that factored in a very tight, a very nice relationship between both parties. You may think that because economic actually dominate Thailand's foreign policy towards Myanmar right now doesn't go to another kind of foreign policies towards Myanmar. It does though. So on the economic side, the current government of Thailand resumed the Way project, pushing for more special economic zones, and also gave a lot of aids to Myanmar as well. I mean, like, Thailand is not a rich country. It still tried to build a very good, foreign relationship with neighboring countries. And it gave infrastructure aid to Myanmar in a total amount of 6 billion baht last year. Basically, those go to the study of potentials of developing towns, roads, and basic infrastructure in Myanmar. We also have a political policy towards Myanmar as well, and that is to allow Myanmar's ethnic minority to hold a meeting in Thailand, especially in the north. This does not go to the government, does not go against the government of Myanmar though, because Thailand allowed this to happen because they want to support the peace process happening in Myanmar right now. They believe that when the peace process has ended and successfully ended, that will bring peace to the country, and that definitely going to benefit investors along the border. So basically, we have a lot of policies that does not directly address the issue of economy, but still, at the end of the day, benefit economic interest of the Thai investors and Thailand in Myanmar. Those are so earlier was were our policies initiated by the government, prioritized by the government. We still have a number of policies initiated and support and implemented by supporting agencies. We have this Thailand International Cooperation Agency, TICA. Well, this is very ironic because these agencies have done some of the projects in neighboring countries, but these agencies are not known inside the countries. I mean, I wouldn't know these agencies until I do some research about it, because it has not been presented, it has not been advertised at all. So TICA has done some academic cooperation with Myanmar, for example, building hospitals in Myanmar, improving hospital healthcare issues, do some skills training for laborers in Myanmar. So this might see as a social issue, social policies. At the end of the day, when you build hospitals and improve healthcare situation in Myanmar, that factor in a better health and more productive laborers. So at the end of the day, this actually is not directly about social or any political issues or benefits. Everything tailors into economic benefits of Thailand's going into Myanmar, invest, and probably take advantage of a lower wage laborers in Myanmar. Also, they do some skills training for labor that will definitely answer the question of having factories from Thailand moving to Myanmar and invest there to avoid a higher wage in Thailand right now. We also have these neighboring countries' economic development NIDA, financial that gives financial aid, economic cooperation, doing some research and study, especially those potentials, do some research about potentials of development in Myanmar. This agency is responsible for that. The business sector, especially those business along the border, also do a lot to improve skills of the labor along the border, because they have to employ these laborers, Myanmar, into their businesses. All right, so the status of the Way project, I told you earlier that it was stopped because of the lack of funding. Right now, just this month, the Japanese government already agreed to take part in the project. Japan invested in the special person vehicle and committed to draft another development blueprint. Now we already have a development blueprint, but when the Japanese government joined into the project, they wanted to write another draft to probably improve the development of the project and make it more transparent. What they are going to do is that they are going to compare two blueprints together and select one, and this process might take up to 4 or 5 months, so it will delay the continuation of the project, but not...
May I remind you, you have only 1 minute.
All right, I will wrap up. So this is the expansion of special economic zones I was talking about. So now we have a special economic zone coming up, and Chiang Rai, Kanchanaburi, so more economic zones that will link up to Myanmar cities across the border. As challenges, we see a good intention, goodwill from both governments to improve ties and develop infrastructure to benefit both countries. What we have both on both sides is limited capabilities. The limited capabilities from Myanmar side has shown through this inability to do the improvement of nationalities of Myanmar labor going to Thailand. It takes a very long time to do that, and that delays the process of register migrant labor in Thailand. We also have policy discontinuity and also negative attitude of Thai people towards Myanmar. I would say at the end, I don't think it will tailor in any Thailand's foreign policy towards Myanmar. So although it might obstruct a little bit, but it would not affect it because everything happened at the top level. And what happened on the ground on the Thailand side, the perception of people would not really affect it because all the agencies come to an agreement that economic opportunities stand in Myanmar. So at the end of the day, I believe that this ties between Thailand and Myanmar will go on and will push a priority on economic side. And that is my conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pongwen, for your inspiring speech on Thai-Myanmar relationship. Yes, Thai and Myanmar are the very good neighbor, and unfortunately, Myanmar joined the ASEAN after 30 years. The ASEAN was founded, but Myanmar and Thai have enjoyed very long-standing friendship, and Myanmar and Thai have to play a complementary role to make the AEC successful, which will benefit a lot for the rest of our neighbor. Thank you very much indeed. Next speaker, Dr. Shamshad Ikan. May I request you to make your presentation?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Niaz, for providing me this opportunity to speak here in this seminar. Now, as you know, I would be talking about Japan's engagement with Myanmar. I would be focusing on more on recent engagement, but to give a little overview, generally it is believed that following Myanmar's transition towards democracy, Japan followed suit. It adopted similar measures that its European or its Western allies did. But if you look at Japan's policy, Japan's attitude towards Myanmar, it was neither abandonment nor a full-fledged imposing sanctions on Myanmar during this junta rule. Why Tokyo didn't abandon Myanmar? You can find the answer that Japan wanted to tap various business opportunities that which Myanmar offers to Japanese companies. Now, a little bit of historical relations between Myanmar and Japan. Many of you may be aware that Japan had trained a group of 30 Japanese Myanmarese nationalists in around 1942 to foment a rebellion against the Britishers. But it is another story that before they could utilize those tools, they occupied Myanmar in 1942. That lasted till 1945. That occupation lasted till 1945. Now, it did pay some dividend to Japan as among the 30s Japanese trained people. They occupied various key administrative posts, including the two senior men, Aung San and Ne Win. And they were called within Japan Japanese lobby in Burma. Now, during this, the rule of these two persons, the political and economic relations between Myanmar and Japan jumped manifold. Now, if you look from the Japanese side, you would find there is a Burmese lobby within Japan. Prime Minister Kishinobu Suke and present Prime Minister Shintaro Abe's father, Shintaro Abe, was one of the proponent. They had been advocating that Japan should have a good relationship with Thailand. And then Takeo Fukuda, after visiting Myanmar, he announced heart-to-heart relationship with Myanmar as well as various ASEAN countries. So what happens till after 1945 till 1988 when the military rule military junta came to power, business to business and political to political relations were very strong between these two countries. Now this was primary because let me give you then what happened during this 1998 to 2011 period. When Western countries imposed sanctions on Myanmar, Japan was reluctant to follow the same line. So what it did, it adopted a three principal policies. When the name of Japan comes and Japan's foreign policy comes, they have various three principles, three non-nuclear principles, three principles on exporting of arms and arms-related technology. So vis-a-vis Myanmar, they had adopted a three-pronged strategy, which was to have dialogue, active engagement, and then gradualism. Now let me explain what was these policies. They, as part of the first policy, they said that there should be continuous dialogue between the two entities, State Peace Development Council as well as the opposition NLD. It is quite known that when in 1995 Aung San Suu Kyi was released briefly, the Japanese embassy was in close contacts with Madam Suu Kyi, and then there are anecdotes that her residence was just opposite to the Japanese embassy in Myanmar. So the Japanese officials used to visit her on a regular basis. Now it is believed that there was no contact between Myanmar and Japan during political contacts during this period, this 26 years period. But if you look at the political interactions, Prime Minister Koizo Obuchi, he met Tan Shwe in Manila at the sideline of one of the ASEAN conference. And then former Prime Minister Rohitoro Hashimoto, he visited in December 1999. And then again, the Business Federation of Japan, they went with a big delegation and met key Myanmar officials there. Now, if you look at the another component, active engagement, they did follow the sanctions, but they continued some humanitarian aid to Myanmar, and during the 26 years sanction period, this amounted to something 26.8 billion yen, which is quite huge if you convert into Myanmarese currency. Now, another agency, JICA, was also active in giving personal training to Myanmarese people. And then the third strategy, which was gradualism, which was actually to propagate its policy and to put forward its policy that why Japan is engaging, why Japan is not abandoning Myanmar the way the European Union and the US has done. Now they were saying that Japan is not capable of changing regime through intervention as US and others had done in different parts of the world. So for Japan, the sustained engagement is the only option. And they argue that through gradualism, though gradualism doesn't bring immediate change, but it helps in fostering trust over a long period. Now, as it has been being discussed, that just a few weeks after Hillary Clinton's visit to Myanmar, Japan was quick to invite the Foreign Minister of Myanmar and the then Foreign Minister Koichiro Gemba, who was of DPJ. He had talks with the Myanmarese Foreign Minister. And at that time, he has offered to waive off some 300 billion yen on Myanmar. And it was conditioned that if Myanmar undertakes further democratization, Japan would waive off these loans. And at that time, the total loan on Myanmar was from Japanese side was some 500 billion yen. Now, when the government of DPJ changed in 2012, Prime Minister Abe was quick to send his deputy prime minister, and who was the finance minister of Japan as well, to Myanmar. And then he himself visited Myanmar in 2013. It was part of the 10 ASEAN member trip he has undertaken. So what has he done? He waived off some yen 190 billion, though this waiver was a little less than a DPJ, previous DPJ has offered. But for Myanmar, it was big relief. And then Japan pledged some 91 billion yen in fresh aid to Myanmar. Quite interestingly, the grant portion of this aid was some 40 billion yen, and these grants were not to be repaid. So Myanmar benefited hugely from this policy of Abe, and after 26 years of gap, Japan revived its ODA policy towards ODA loan towards Myanmar. So what are the priorities and objectives of Japan in Myanmar? It is twofold. On the one hand, it is said that Japan wants to contain the economic dominance of China in Myanmar, and on the other hand, Japan wants to capitalize business opportunities for its companies. And quite interestingly, why I am saying that Japan is trying to capitalize the business opportunities, when Prime Minister Abe visited Myanmar, he wrote on his Facebook status that it is the second top level sales of effort following the trip of Russia and Middle East. Now, you can understand that it was solely to tap the business opportunities that Myanmar has offered after reopening. Now, one of the key officials, though the Japanese media has not named the official, he has gone on record saying that the next member of coalition to contain China must be Myanmar. So what happens for the containment of China in Myanmar in economic sense is not that visible, but you can see that a number of Japanese companies are investing, and the number from 2013 to 2014 level has just jumped from 53 to 97. It is a quite twofold jump. Now again, this was talked that Japan is supporting Thilawa SEZ, and then recently Japan has pledged 100 billion, I'm not remembering the figure, but huge loan to CLMV and Thailand, the Mekong Basin countries, which will go a long way. Now, but within Japan, it has generated a debate. What the Japanese intelligentsia and the media is arguing that Japan is focusing too much on profitability, and it is not focusing on democratization. There is two kinds of debate. One section says that political stability will be difficult to establish without economic development. Now, a growth economy would nurture the middle class, which in turn support the democratization. Apparently, Japan as a state is pursuing this policy. But within Japan, the Japan Times and the Asahi Shimbun has been arguing that if Abe concentrates on bringing profit to Japanese companies, without ensuring that Japan's participation benefits the Myanmar people, the country's democratization process will experience difficulties. Now, Asahi Shimbun is more vocal. It says that the emphasis should be laid on supporting the long-suffering people of Myanmar so that they can live in peace and in democratic society. That should take precedence over focusing on Japan's economic advancement and Myanmar's geopolitical significance to check China. So clearly, a section of Japanese are not happy the way Japan has not been outgoing the democratization process in Myanmar. So obviously, Japan is looking at twin objectives. One is to contain China, and second is contain China economically, and second is to benefit from the investment opportunities that Japan offers. Now, of course, as part of the second objective, it has made inroads. As I cited, that a number of companies are investing in Myanmar. They have set up their industrial bases there. And then the ODA has, investment through ODA has also started. What I feel that containing China would be very difficult for Japan economically, as during those 26 years, Japan's presence economically was negligible. And to bridge that gap, that lacuna or that vacuum that Japan has left during the 26th, which Chinese capture would be very difficult. But what is likely that Japan's presence may help ease Myanmar's overdependence on China. So I would conclude by saying this, and maybe I would touch upon if you have some queries in the question and answer session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ken.
Well, it's not so much a question, but rather a comment, but comments. And first of all, I'd like to thank all three presenters for their very good presentations. I just want to add some facts from my own experience, as well as from as well as some observations. Well, regarding Myanmar and ASEAN, Dr. Prakash has given us a very good overview of the relationship between Myanmar and ASEAN. But let me just add one thing about Myanmar's entry into ASEAN. It was, or rather say, let us say, it is a groundbreaking move by Myanmar. Because until our entry into ASEAN, we were never part of any regional economic arrangement except those in the, under the UN. And this was the first time that Myanmar decided to become part of a regional organization. It was a step not taken lightly, because we had been discussing with the ASEAN Secretary General almost 2 years before, not before our entry, but before our decision to join ASEAN. We were taking a look at all aspects and the implications of joining ASEAN. And if I may say very candidly, our greatest question was on FTA, Free Trade Area. And the question was not the concept of FTA itself, the Free Trade Area itself, but whether Myanmar will be ready. That was our main consideration, because we felt that in the light of the changing international situation and regional situation, Myanmar should be part of ASEAN. But we also have to look, as I said, including the FTA, at the practical aspects of joining ASEAN. But after much deliberation, and I must say that even some reservations from some people in the government, the leaders who were in favor of joining ASEAN decided to join ASEAN in 1997. But there is another aspect to this, is that 1997 is the 30th anniversary of ASEAN. And since 94, ASEAN has an objective that by 30th anniversary, all the 10 Southeast Asian countries should be members of ASEAN. But of course, at the last moment, there was some problem in Cambodia, and Cambodia was not able to join in 1997. I just want to add this little footnote. Well, regarding the relation with Thailand, Dr. Parkwada has given a very good presentation, and I congratulate her. Yes, economic factors does play a lot in our relations. And as you rightly mentioned, although this is not so prevalent among the leadership and also maybe amongst the intellectuals and the elite, there is still in Thailand some anti-Myanmar feeling among the people. But on our side, let me say that with Thailand we have, since at the time of our independence, if I'm taking too long, I will cut it short, of the border region. And if I may say very openly also, there were also times when some Thai government, because Thai has a lot of governments, as you know, some Thai governments were also providing overt and covert support to these rebel groups. But at the same time, this changed in the 1990s, late 1990s, because the insurgency problem has also died down for one thing in our country. And another thing, you mentioned Jinnak, but there was another Thai player who was very instrumental in our Myanmar-Thai relations. That is her brother, Tak Singh. He was one of the most ardent advocates of Myanmar entry to ASEAN. And he was also supportive of us economically. And I'm very happy. At the same time, let me say that on the part of Myanmar, we don't have so much anti-Thai sentiments. Indeed, we have some admiration for Thai's economic progress and achievements. I personally have a lot of respect for the Thai economy. And yes, we are happy that the relations, I mean, of course, you now have a military government, and of course, between military to military people, they have their own ways of thinking, and the relations are quite good. But I think that on the whole, whether there is a civilian government in Thailand or whether there is a new government in Myanmar, I think the Thai-Myanmar relations is now on a more solid basis, bilaterally as well as through ASEAN. And I think that our relations will grow. And just a short comment, I've taken too much of time, just a short comment regarding Japan. We have a special place for Japan in our country because, of course, at one time we rebelled against the Japanese because of the treatment of our people. But at the same time, we have a special sentiment for Japan because it has helped us in our fight for independence. And we look forward to having better relations with Japan, whom we see as an economic powerhouse, which can help us. But at the same time, I think you have put it very correctly, Dr. Shamsuddin. There's a certain anti-Chinese sentiments in Japanese actions. And of course, to tell you frankly, I don't know whether we will be so keen to be part of this anti-Chinese sentiments that are being felt by Japan. I'm sorry I have to take too long. I just want to make some comments just to add to what has been discussed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, C.I. Ukumawin, because during Myanmar preparation to enter the ASEAN, he was the deputy minister with Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He played the key role in discussing, and therefore his experience and sharing enlightened us. Thank you very much.
Well, reference to Dr. Pankaj's presentation, I'd like to supplement some more regarding the contribution made by Myanmar towards the ASEAN countries. I'm referring especially to the energy sector. Because of our membership with ASEAN by 1987, and since then we are working very closely in the energy field. All the countries in our neighborhood, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and even Vietnam, Philippines, of course. Our main contribution, if you may know, Myanmar, of course, after all these hardships, we have the natural resources only to survive ourselves for export, okay? With the discovery of natural gas in Myanmar, since our membership to ASEAN, we have managed to discuss with Thailand, and we have been able to export some sizable amount of natural gas to Thailand. And I believe most people will surely acknowledge that because of our gas export to Thailand, the Thailand's economy is getting more improved. There's a very significant factor that who can contribute to the ASEAN countries, okay? Likewise, we have Petronas from Malaysia operating the Yadikon gas field, and it's also another one of our contribution to another ASEAN country. And likewise, all the engineering support, logistics support are done from the engineering bases in Singapore and Indonesia. So because of our membership in ASEAN, at least in the energy sector, our ASEAN neighbors, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, they'll be able to exploit or they'll be able to enjoy some of the benefits from Myanmar's natural resources. This point is, at least to me, I feel that has been neglected. Our only benefit, if I may say, by being a member in ASEAN is we can use ASEAN as a forum through which we can communicate to other countries internationally. Apart from that, I don't feel Myanmar has benefited much from being an ASEAN member. That's my personal feeling, okay? And reference to Dr. Pong Kwan's presentation, we are a bit concerned of the attitude of the Thai people to Myanmar. Myanmar people, like Ukamawin has already explained to you, we always look up to Thai people because of their resilience in all these contemporary political history, starting from Second World War. We always look up to Thailand because of the same faith that we share. And we always look up to Thailand because of their very high performance in the economic development endeavors. So, taking advantage of this conference, I'd like to request, please do something about changing the attitude of the Thai people, okay? That's my another. And also, you mentioned something about the relationship between the Myanmar army and Thai army. And you are stating that it has some influence in the economic relationship. At least in the natural gas export deal that we have with Thailand, there's no such influence by military. It's purely commercial. And we are getting the good price from Thailand. So sometimes people may think that our dealings in the sales of natural gas, either with China or Thailand, it has something to do with the political influence. All our export deals to China and Thailand, I can say for sure, because I am physically involved in those process, it is purely commercial, no political influence, no any other influence. And thank you for allowing me to make some clarification. Thank you very much.
Any response from?
In terms of investment, I very well take the wise words from the former minister. In terms of investment, it has given that leeway for ASEAN to make incremental changes, which has been very encouraging. Let's put it this way. On the part of Myanmar, whatever the insulation and the isolation it had with regard to the outside world, it has eroded considerably. Now the amount of FDI that the Myanmar is getting, it's a splurge. It's too much. Now the problem with both ASEAN and Myanmar is to build those institutions which can sustain that interest, international interest in Myanmar, so that the momentum of economic growth and development can be sustained. Because if you say the case of SEZs, Dawai, or whichever you take case of, there are issues with regard to power, there is issues with regard to land, and the skilled labor, that is the biggest problem. So in the next 5 to 10 years, Myanmar will have to address these issues, and ASEAN is the best forum which can provide some assistance in this regard. On the issue of the energy itself, in terms of energy, the one area where I believe Myanmar could have done wonderful, given the fact that much of its land has been underutilized, is in terms of renewable energy. Because then Myanmar could have served as an example for the whole ASEAN that, look, these also models of renewable energy and tapping those renewable sources can be explored in Myanmar, because it's slightly underdeveloped, and that sort of leverage that it has with regard to its population and the land could provide something like solar parks, huge solar parks, wind farms, even Jatropa and certain seeds which could yield oil. That could have been explored, and Myanmar would have provided a wonderful opportunity for the ASEAN to really explore those new areas of renewable energy. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
It was very two nice presentations. 3 nice presentations in the morning today, and what I felt was that while discussing about Myanmar's relations with, on the one hand with ASEAN, on the other with Japan and with Thailand, perhaps what needs to be recalled is why this relationship developed in the way it did. Perhaps we need to also remember about how Myanmar was getting isolated because of the approach of the West at that time, and the policy of sanctions and boycott which the United States and the European Union had adopted, and how against all opposition ASEAN went ahead and included Myanmar within the organization. So I think it was the boldness of ASEAN has to be commended, and that it withstood all kinds of pressure to include Myanmar within within ASEAN. And similarly, as Minister mentioned, that even within Myanmar, there were some voices of dissent, and that Myanmar was able to overcome those voices of dissent and decide to join ASEAN. That also shows the close understanding between Myanmar and the rest of the ASEAN countries. That they were able to do so in a time of great strife shows the great understanding. That is as far as the common understanding between ASEAN and Myanmar is concerned. But obviously there were also economic reasons, as has been mentioned, that the gas deal which happened between Myanmar and Thailand was totally commercial. And that was also a time because of the sanctions and boycott, the Myanmar did need to get more revenue, and therefore to utilize that revenue for its own development, which was needed. So I think my own understanding of this is that the neighboring countries perhaps understood Myanmar better, and Myanmar understood the neighboring countries better than those countries which were at a distance. As far as India is concerned, we started changing our policies in early 1990s towards Myanmar, and the policy of engagement around 1993. And so that shows that India was understanding about Myanmar, so was ASEAN. India has a common border. ASEAN countries, some of them do have a common border with Myanmar. So the more further away you get away from Myanmar, the less understanding you have of Myanmar, I think. So Japan was one step removed, I think. And then you had the European Union, which did not seem to understand Myanmar, and United States, which took a fairly long time before its Secretary of State actually visited Myanmar and changed the policy. So I think this understanding has to be further renewed, and we need to understand the economic and the social processes within our countries, and after having understood those processes, we should be able to collaborate and cooperate, and that is where a deeper understanding of each other's problems is required. And therefore think tanks like ours need to collaborate in order to further those research processes. We need to have research collaboration. If there are problems at the border, we need to be able to do research on them and encourage the governments to collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Uday, for your sharing, especially the concept of think tank, decision through think tank is very, very important. I would like to share my experience with the Chief Minister of the Manly region, and then he is very impressed with the Indian the decision-making process through the multi think tank. And then he mentioned even in the meeting that we are to develop the think tank culture. Thank you. Dr. Bowman, any comment?
Thank you very much for your comments. And I agreed with everything you said, especially with the roles of Thaksin, but I didn't mention in my presentation because I wanted to focus on the current issues and the current development of Thailand's and Myanmar's relations. Regarding the attitude of Thai people towards Myanmar, I agree that is a big problem, and it doesn't seem to me that the government has worked hard to change that attitude, because even the Prime Minister and other people working with the government still do not really have a positive attitude towards Myanmar, and that actually frightened me a lot because the latest case when there was a murder and Got Tao, southern part of Thailand, the murder of two foreigners. What the Prime Minister did was to blame it on the Myanmar migrant workers right away without investigation. And that was very worrisome. In Thailand, I would say that there is a big separation of official policies towards Myanmar and policies to improve attitude of our own people towards neighboring countries. I guarantee you that this doesn't happen only towards Myanmar, but most of our neighboring countries, including Cambodia and Laos as well. Some of the scholars are working hard to change the mindset, but I would say it would take a very long time because the official education and curriculum still does not really accept what we are trying to do. But we're trying hard to do that, and we're working in every possible channels to improve attitudes of Thai people towards neighboring countries. And it is difficult, but we're committed to do that. But I would say it would take a very long time because it's of sensitive issues, and especially recently that the Thai medias kept remaking old movies and old series about wars with neighboring countries. That is very worrisome. But what's striking me is that recently, with a very polarized politics in Thailand right now, it is very hard to work or push forward any agendas and any improvements, because with one side of Thai people being more nationalistic, it tries to isolate other neighboring countries from us as well. But it's something that I agree that we have to work on.
Thank you very much for giving the good appreciation and comments on our presentation. I also thank Dr. Uday Bhanu Singh for commenting on my paper. What I agree with you, sir, that European Union and US's isolation didn't work pretty much. And I would like to re-emphasize here that when Clinton administration, Bill Clinton administration was there, US has adopted a policy of engaging China as well as North Korea at that time, which they said sunshine diplomacy. The Japanese side, they were trying to convince the then US administration to adopt similar policy vis-a-vis Myanmar. Somehow it was a part of covert diplomacy in which they were trying to convince. But later on, those efforts paved way when Hillary Clinton came to power, and she was more pragmatic to open up, or more pragmatic to embrace Myanmar. So the effort that Japan has taken previously, that materialized later on. And again, when my doctoral research was pointing out, I agree that a number of companies or a number of countries are entering into Myanmar, and they have been establishing the special economic zones. But who will benefit from that? Are the Myanmaris are capable enough? Do they have the wealth to absorb those products? So what I believe that at the same time, when they are pouring investment and capitals in Myanmar, they should try to augment the human resource within Myanmar, as well as try to go for capacity building of the Myanmarese people, so that later on they benefit from those economic developments. Thank you very much.
Thank you all presenter for your interesting and very informative speeches. Especially, thank you to Dr. Pongwan for your inspiring speech. But I have one comment, that every society have people with good attitude and bad attitude. Also, there are some people in Myanmar with bad attitudes. Even today, we address the Thai Yodia. Maybe you know that this is very derogative words, because in the past, the Thai kingdom was, the capital is Ayodhya. The Ayodhya means the city of impenetrable. Then the Myanmar chain, from Ayodhya to Yodhya. Well, the reason why I'm trying to elaborate on is that the only the people who have critical thinking and who have the good education can think beyond culture, and these people will contribute to making a better world for everyone. Thank you very much indeed. And now is the time for tea break. Please enjoy your tea break. Second section of the morning section, may I request Professor Kudo to make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ukimong. So, and thank you very much for again giving me this opportunity to make the presentation. My presentation, two-polar growth strategy in Myanmar, seeking high and balanced growth development, is on the again the economic growth, but it also relates to the yesterday's discussion, center periphery, and also today's discussion with the neighboring countries and also the Japanese relations. So in 2012 June, President U Thein declared that the government started the second phase of reform strategy, and then that is the economic reform and economic growth. And the president said that Myanmar seeks for high economic growth. Yesterday we discussed, and at the same time that he provided the four economic policies. The first one is a development of agriculture and all-round development. Second is a balanced and proportionate growth among regions and states. And third is inclusive growth. And the fourth is the emergence of reliable statistics. So today's topic is related to the second, balanced and proportionate growth among regions and states. Of course, the regions where the Myanmar Burmese people mainly live, and states where the minority people mainly live. So actually, this is a high and balanced growth. Is to achieve the two targets is a difficult task, because the economic agglomeration enhances the economic growth, because of there exist various externalities arising from the agglomeration, such as like a supply of industry, specific labor, parts and knowledges, and so on. And again, the economic growth requires the economic agglomerations. So this is a circular causality. The economic agglomeration enhances the economic growth, and the economic growth enhances the economic agglomerations. So so there is a trade-off between the rapid economic growth and regional equality, income equality or industrial equalities. And especially this trade-off is strong for the latecomers. For the income, the level is still low countries. So I just skip this kind of discussions. And then this picture is satellite image was shown by the yesterday, Usoming. As you see, the Myanmar is still dark in 2009. I think now it's quite brighter than then. But at least that you can observe that the three dots. One is Yangon, and then this is a Naypyidaw capital, and then the Mandalay. There are three dots. And then according to this satellite image, I calculated the GDP or economic activities, supposing that the strength of the light is proportionate to the economic activities. So then we have three centers, the Yangon, and the Naypyidaw and Mandalay. But of course that the Naypyidaw is very bright because of the politically prioritized at the time. Because the Myanmar was very, very dark, the blackout was everywhere. However, the Naypyidaw was prioritized to give the electricity. That's why, even though the economic activity, there is no industrial cluster in Naypyidaw, it is very bright. So actually, we have two economic poles. One is the Yangon, and the Yangon, and then these three areas emit about 40% of the night lights. And then Yangon alone emit about 22% of the whole light. And then the Mandalay also. And then you can observe some of the strong light along the border with China and also Thailand. But there is no border effect along the Northeast India border and also the Bangladesh border. And in terms of the population, we have actually the three population centers. One is again the Yangon and also the Irrawaddy. Irrawaddy is one of the biggest population center. And then the second is the Mandalay, and then the Central Dry Zone. Central Dry Zone is surrounding around the Mandalay. So Irrawaddy alone, about the 30% of the population. And then the dry zone alone constitute about 18% of the populations. And then the Naypyidaw is here, but the Naypyidaw does not have the population center. And then the third population center is North Rakhine. This is the Bengali, so-called Rohingya people concentrate. But this is a little bit another story, so I just focus on these two population centers. That is Yangon with Irrawaddy as its hinterland, and Mandalay with Central Dry Zone as its hinterland. So this is the GDP density, the GDP activity per square meters. So Myanmar's case, of course, I need to again state that Naypyidaw is it's bright because of the prioritized politics. So this is not the center, but this is the administrative center. So you have two centers, that is Yangon and also the Mandalay. But so this is actually the two polar. Actually, at this moment, that Yangon is quite larger than the Mandalay. So we can say that it's 1.5 polars. And if you compare to the Thailand is a very unipolar. This is a Bangkok, and then this is the eastern seaboard. So this Bangkok area accumulated the economic activities are concentrated in this area. And then how about on the contrary, that Vietnam has a so-called two polars, Ho Chi Minh City and then Hanoi. Of course, that Ho Chi Minh is bigger than the Hanoi, but at this moment, the Hanoi is also the administrative center, that is the capital, and Hanoi is growing. So we can say that nearly two polars. So the question is, which direction you go? You go to the single polar or you go to the two polars? Then I recommend it to go to the two polar. So this is the comparison with between the primary city and the secondary city in terms of the population and the GDP. And you can see that the Thailand is really the single polar. The Bangkok area and then the Chiang Mai area, the GRDP is Bangkok area is 22 times bigger than the Chiang Mai. whereas the Yangon, Mandalay, and Ho Chi Minh, Hanoi is 3-4 times bigger than. And then for the Myanmar's case, this is almost proportionate to the population. So it's not yet concentrated, over-concentrated in Yangon. And if you see the distribution of the population, this green line, this green line is Thailand, and then the blue line shows the Myanmar. This is actually the Myanmar's distribution of the population is more, how to say, bent. This is a Lorentz curve. And then this is against your impression. Thailand is more, how to say, lopsided to the big cities. But in reality, the Myanmar's population is more lopsided to the cities. This is maybe because of the Myanmar is quite large, larger than the Thailand, 1.3 times larger, and the periphery area is very sparsely populated. That is why the Myanmar is the population is already how to say lopsided distribution, skewed distribution. And then but whereas if you see that the GDP, Thailand, of course, is more it's more concentrated in the larger cities. But Myanmar is still equally distributed. But when the economic growth goes on, because the population is already unevenly distributed, I think that the GDP also go to the more uneven distributions. So how, and then the next, let me go to the poverty situation. This is a poverty situation, and then on the horizontal axis, I show the poverty share. So how many population, how many poverty people are living in which division, region, and state. And on the vertical axis, I show the poverty incidence. So all those like Ayeyarwady and Yangon, Mandalay, and then that is surrounding Magwe or Sagaing, all these population center has of course, the bigger poverty numbers. But the average of the poverty incidence is not so much. But for the border areas, states, it's a scattering. Their population is small. That's why in terms of the absolute number of the poverty, not so much, but the incidence, some like a Chin state is very high, Shan East also very high, something and then like that. But not necessarily all the states poverty incidence is not high, like Kaya and Cayenne or Kachin, those states are not necessarily having the high poverty incidence. So that's why for this poverty center, the population center, we go for the industrial development by two-polar growth strategy. And then for the states area, bordering area, we go for the border development with enhanced economic connectivity. So first, this is the poverty area. And then the Yangon and Ayeyarwady constitute about 27% of the poverty population. And then by making Yangon as a growth pole, you can address to this population. And you can absorb the abundant labor from the Ayeyarwady division to also the Yangon. Or maybe you can establish the factory in the Yangon, Ayeyarwady too. And then the Mandalay and the Sagaing, Magwe constitute about 24% of the poverty population. And by developing the Mandalay as a second growth pole, you can address this population. And also some like Sagaing also you can address by this. And also Bago and maybe Yangon can address the Bago. So more than 50% of the poverty population you can address. But the thing is that Rakhine, this is you need a special treatment. And also, if you look at the industrial base, the Mandalay and Yangon, this is a very outdated data, but Mandalay and Yangon are the only sort of the diversified industrial base. Other regions, most of the other regions' industries are the food processing industries, like rice mills or oil extractions and so on. And then if you look at this is a distribution of the large-scale private factories. Even though it is large, according to the Myanmar standard, it is not large. It is quite small and medium size in the international standard. So this is, but then all these, the large-scale industries are located either in Yangon or Mandalay. So this is a sort of the base of the industrial base. So industrial base, at this moment, that Yangon and Mandalay, these two, only these two areas has the sort of the industrial base. So during that military period, the government wanted to disperse the industrial growth in the local areas. For example, this is the motorcycles production. The motorcycles production was only allowed in Pakokku industrial zone. That is in the quite rural area in the central dry zone areas. So all the parts and components are imported from China through Mandalay. And then they assemble in the Pakokku industrial zone, and then they sell to the Mandalay again. So the transportation costs a lot, and then more importantly, there is no suppliers. If they are located in the Mandalay, maybe the assembler want to nurture the suppliers in Mandalay, because Mandalay has the machineries, industries, the base. But in Pakokku, there is no possibility for that kind of the backward industrial linkages. So the forced balanced growth bears high cost. Then I calculated the two-polar growth strategy with the geographical simulation model. This geographical simulation model was developed by my colleagues in IDE. I don't have time to elaborate on that, but you can have a homepage, and then you can check with this model structure and the data. And then basically, this green one is I calculated that one single pole, or the two pole, or the many pole. Many pole here is I put 15 growth poles. So what will happen after a certain time of year? And then this is the red one is the GDP growth. So one thing sure is if you go for the many polars, if you scatter your scarce resources to many areas, then you sacrifice the economic growth. But of course, you can achieve you can reduce the share of the Yangon, concentration up to the 30%, and Mandalay also. But you have to sacrifice the economic growth. But the two polars can reach the highest, or at least equal to the single polar, that is Yangon growth. And then at the same time that if you go to the single polar, the GDP concentrate on the Yangon areas, more than 55% go to the Yangon, but you can reduce up to about 40%. And then instead, you can increase the Mandalay share to up to 20%. So I think the two-polar growth strategy seems to be more balanced between the growth and the balanced growth. So the message of the two-polar growth is two. First one is do not scatter the scarce resources. Of course, that the Myanmar government pay due attention to the states or the periphery areas. Yeah, that is a very important issue. It's a political issue too. How to make the living standard of the ethnic minorities better. That is a political mandate. But if you go for that, the previous strategy, then you will sacrifice the growth. That is one. The second is you have to think about the focus on the Mandalay development. The two-polar, probably Yangon, will go growth naturally. The FDI come to the Yangon, and then the Tirawa SEZ already operating. But how about the Mandalay? So two-polar's message is that how to address the development of Mandalay in order to achieve for the two-polar. Otherwise, the Myanmar's spatial development will go to the single polar, that is the Yangon over-concentration. Okay, so I don't elaborate. But actually, so what happened? What we should do on the peripheral areas? So that's why I'm not barbarian too much. Two-polar growth with the border development, with the enhancement of the connectivity. Fortunately, Myanmar is surrounded by the richer countries like China, Thailand, and also the India. And so by connecting these periphery with the neighboring countries, they can develop. So I put this assumption for the simulations, better connectivities by reducing the tax or the custom facilitations or the infrastructure improvement, and then also the Dawei, Chaopiu ports development and so on. Then I calculated you can achieve the better growth and better regional development, the two-polar growth plus connectivities. So and then Myanmar's the connectivity enhancement will also contribute to not only Myanmar's economic growth but also as the regions as a whole. So Myanmar is a sort of a diamond shape, and then we propose that the 4 economic corridors. One is the North-South economic corridor, East-West economic corridor, Right-Sash economic corridor, and then Left-Sash economic corridor. And then all these 4 corridors, all the 5 neighboring countries are connected to each other, and also with the Bay of Bengal. And then all these corridors go across the Mandalay. So the Mandalay can be a sort of the transportation or logistics hub. Maybe we can consider about that. And also this is the area of the border area, the Mesot area. I visited quite a long time ago, but the situation probably is not changed. The Myanmar people come to Thailand, Mesot, and work as at the factory. But why not to come to the Myanmar side, Myawaddy side? The Myawaddy side that more workers are available, and so for that you need to think about like a SEZ, something in the border areas. Okay, and then these SEZ in border areas was already implemented by the Cambodia, like a Manhattan SEZ. This is close to the Vietnam, and also the Kokkon SEZ. This is close to the Thailand. Okay, so this kind of the SEZ on the border can be possible, I think. So as a conclusion, the two-polar growth strategy and the border area development with enhancement of the connectivity prevents either over or under concentration and makes high and balanced growth possible. And to make the strategy feasible, spatially targeted investment, including physical and institutional infrastructure in Yangon and Mandalay and some border areas are required. Especially now that Tirawa SEZ is the first growth pole strategy, but how to do with the Mandalay is the task, is a challenge. And then for that maybe SEZ is the one of the way of the one of the policy tool to achieve these things. Okay, thank you very much. The paper is available at the website, Two-Polar Growth Strategy in Myanmar, in the IDE's website. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Kyudo, for your very comprehensive presentation based on your in-depth study. I can guess how extensively you have traveled in Myanmar. Also, I'm very glad to know that you are well connected with the decision maker in Myanmar. Thank you. May I request Dr. Jagannathan to make your presentation? Thank you.
I'd like to thank Nias for giving this opportunity. I'm going to speak on my presentation. I'm going to examine the EU's engagement with Myanmar. We have been discussing about the role of external players, especially the great powers in this region in general and Myanmar in particular. To understand the role of European Union in Myanmar, first we need to understand what is EU. That also it's a big challenges in understanding the role of the European Union, particularly the perception and misperception about EU. And especially from the Asian community, what we see European or we perceive European Union in different contexts and different terms. When it comes to EU, we mean that it's kind of a like just like Japan, which just gives a lot of money, which has a lot of money. It's an economic bloc or regional organization or intergovernmental organizations. We tend to see, or we tend to ignore the political and the security element of the European Union as an actor. It's a global actor. We always see European Union as a kind of someone who sets norms and labor standards, especially this part of the country. So the beast called European Union came into existence in 1993 with the Treaty of Maastricht Treaty. Then it has been seen as an economic giant because it has 20% of world GDP, and it is among the top 5 economies, even the number 1 economies of the world, despite the Euro crisis. And I personally feel that Euro crisis is too exaggerated, and especially from the medias and from other analyst groups, to see that you're getting kind of a pessimistic view about the European Union is going to collapse or the Eurozone is going to collapse. It's a regional bloc which having 28 member states of the European countries and 19 members of the part of the Eurozone subscribe to this Euro currency or the European Monetary Fund. 3 great powers and 2 nuclear armed forces. So we should not underestimate the power or the kind of the political weightage the European Union has. It is a global actor with the common foreign and security policy came into existence with the Lisbon Treaty in 2009. The EU has adopted a structural framework that how EU should engage with the world in particular and the other countries. It adopts soft power approach as compared to the US of the military approach, which is very much evident in many cases where you being it is the policy difference on Iraq in 2003, and also you can see that how the EU engages successfully engaged with Iran and nuclear diplomacy, and it has the agreement has been reached despite 10 years engagement, the P5+1. So it uses soft power and it promotes democracy. So the European Union, it is also an active player in international arena, and which should not be seen only through its kind of economic actor. When it comes to in terms of the structural and in terms of the systemic, the component of the European Union, it is a supranational entity. It shares decision-making power among its members. So there is no centralized power or decision-making powers, and it believes in dialogue. So this makes European Union unique, and many political scientists see the European Union as a kind of a postmodern entity, kind of a postmodern state. You cannot say state; it is an entity. So it has the postmodern policy of engagement. So this, so that defines the European Union's the foreign policy or the global actor level in the international the global player. So what are the characteristics of this postmodern entity? There are five characteristics which Robert Cooper and we have identified that also fit into the European Union. One is that there is no breaking down of the distinction between domestic and foreign affairs, which is very much evident in many of these countries. Nowadays, you can't see you cannot differentiate the domestic affairs with the foreign affairs. Both has overlapping in the foreign policies, and mutual interference in domestic affairs and mutual surveillance in each other countries, and the rejection of force in resolving disputes. This is one of the key element which distinguish the European Union from other great powers while engaging with the other part of the country. And also it makes the borders irrelevant from the discourse, the main discourse, the political discourse, and the security is defined and based on this transparency and interdependence. So the interdependence is the operative word for the European Union through strong economic cooperation, which leads to strong economic interdependence. So with that interdependence, we can persuade or leverage the actor whether to change its behavior, if it has any change the behavior. So as in the global thing that European Union exports peace and prosperity, that is its foreign policy goal, which is also very much evident. It is even called as a normative power, a transformative power. The Europeans, especially the Russians and the East European countries, they see European Union as a transformative power which transforms their political system and economic activities. Makes it as a single market and convert that political system into more kind of a democratization process. That is how the East Europeans, even the Russians, they see the European Union as a kind of a transformative power, and we could have seen in what happened in the East European states, how many members from the East European states have joined the European Union. It sets the world trade rules, and which is very evident that we also face, as in the country, India has also faced when it comes to trade with the European Union, and that's a big stumbling block for our relationship with the European Union as an entity. So we prefer to engage with the European countries bilaterally rather than EU. So that is the one perhaps could be a reason that even when Prime Minister visited Brussels, he could not able to have a European Union India-EU summit. And it also involves in these three things. One is a common foreign and security policy to have the solid European position on global issues, and also development assistance and humanitarian aid, where it fits into this Myanmar case. It also involved many peacekeeping operations. It supports almost more than 100 missions engaged with different ethnic conflicts and civil wars across the country. So now coming back to the great power role, the external players' role in South Asia or in this part of the region in general, and particularly in Myanmar, I take kind of a pragmatic view about their role in their geopolitical role in this in Myanmar. As some of the presenters, they have also kind of broadly touched upon that the isolation strategy by the European Union and US from this beginning of the 1990s, and then the European Union has actually pushed Myanmar into Chinese hold, and that the Chinese had filled that vacuum and other things. So that is I believe, I strongly agree with that point, that that's the reason that it forced that the Chinese could get more space in the European Union because of the Great Power Rush. If you see that the role of, if you segregate or dissect the role of US and European Union, you could see that there are a lot of multiple different interests placed within the EU. For instance, the French had huge investment in oil and energy sectors even much before 1988, and they still wanted to continue. Where the Germans wanted to be, they were also have a lot of stakes in this timber and apparels segments, and the investments in that. It is the British within the European Union who are very stubborn on this policy to to impose sanctions and all. The British, they are the one. The British is also supporting the current rebels, in the ethnic process. So they are the one who has a strong, maybe could be the kind of the colonial mindset or the reasons. So that actually kind of followed with the 1996. They have started imposing the sanctions. But if you look at the sanctions which I'm going to discuss, that actually specifies it was very difficult to reach a common position on Myanmar when it comes to the sanctions against Myanmar among these three great powers of the European. So what they decided that there was a kind of discussion about that how to specify those sanctions. So they have come to a conclusion that we should not go for a very strong stringent sanctions like it has been with the Iraq or other states. Rather we go for a selective targets, just focusing on the elites, the military elites of that. And the ruling, the military juntas. The U.S. policy shift, I would say that it all happened in 2011. I think you can also see that how the Obama with the Dawn San Suu Kyi and now with the U.S. president the shift. So there is a kind of qualitative change in the U.S. policy shift from between within the 2012 and 2014, and we should also see the great power role from the U.S. strategy of pivot to Asia. So that also gives a sense of understanding that what is U.S. take, because soon after the Obama became a president, got elected the second term, his first foreign visit was in Myanmar. So it surprised many that why Obama would choose Myanmar of all the countries, because there was expectations that he would visit first Afghanistan. That's a time where you had Osama bin Laden got killed, and he came to office second term. So that also shows that there was a discussion among the Western things that the Obama's second term going to be kind of strengthening his legacy of ideological legacy, like being a Democrat from the Democratic Party. So it is going to join the democratization process. So that is the one involvement of the US wanted to engage with Myanmar across Asia, being it in Myanmar or even in Sri Lanka. So these are the two cases if you compare the Sri Lanka and Myanmar, where the Chinese role even after 2006 and until 2009, then there is a shift in 2010 and 2011, and now it is kind of there are a lot of more engagement from the Western powers, because even in Sri Lanka, the Western powers completely isolated Sri Lanka on the post 2009, but it did not yield any good results. So now they are engaging on with the Sri Lankan in a large scale. So now coming back to the EU-Myanmar relationship, as I said that until 1988, European has been a major player, and Germany was the second only to Japan in providing foreign aid to the country. They were the major donor of the aid, and France too invested in oil and gas sectors. Only the relationship showed after 1998 with the military junta and the civil unrest, then followed by the EU's imposed arms embargo in 1990s and adopted common position on Myanmar. So that is where that EU relationship, I would say, I see the EU-Myanmar relationship is in transition. It is not only the Myanmar is in transition, even the Myanmar's relationship with this Western powers is also in transition. There is a shift from the sanctions to kind of political sympathy or solidarity with the understanding the Myanmar's the domestic compulsions and the imperatives. So there is a kind of a positive change from the Western countries, and perhaps China could be the factor. As I said that the biggest foreign policy tool, for the European Union to coerce its the non-compliant or these states to change its behavior and non-democratic states is using the sanctions. That is the only weapon they have, because that is how to coerce that the target country to change its behavior. So now we're going to examine that what are the sanctions and what are the sanctions and whether it has impacted on Myanmar or not. So I take some kind of critical view about the sanctions. It has been mentioned that the sanctions has done something huge damage to the Myanmar, and it has forced that incumbent to change its course and initiated the process. So I don't believe in that. So I argue the other way around. If you look at the sanctions, what are the nature of the sanctions? It is a selective sanctions, not a kind of very stringent sanctions. It is imposed. It is targeted on the top. The elite level, where you could see if you see the couple of sanctions in the visa bans, which imposed travel restrictions of almost 500 people, the army elites. Then asset freeze of members of military regime and other families, maybe the 1,000 organizations within in the Myanmar, and prohibition of finance loans to Myanmar state-owned enterprises, because those enterprises were controlled by the junta. So it actually targets the regime or the elite, the military elite, and not rather than a very stringent, so that it would affect even the common man, as the case was in Iraq and other cases, even on Iran. The other interesting element of why the sanction did not make an impact is about that. For my understanding, I'm not economic expert, that Myanmar's economy is more or less more informal than the formal economy, and it trade with and China has monopolized that investment in Myanmar. If you look at the foreign direct investment, somebody has mentioned that in the previous presentation, Chinese has the largest FDI in Myanmar across all the sectors. They have monopolized that investment in Myanmar. So I don't think so that would have had an impact on that. So the impact, I don't think so that impact had, the sanctions had a great impact on that the Myanmar and which forced them to change its course. So the things remain changed and there is no tangible results. But why the sanctions was, there was a thought that we need to suspend the sanctions in up to 2011 when they have initiated the so-called reforms, the political reforms or the democratic process that we are going to see. The reforms in Myanmar, the initiated reforms in Myanmar between 2011 and 2012, and followed with the international, the systemic, the imperatives changes with the US focus on this region has been intensified, and there is a kind of strong, feeling from the European Union in the post-economic crisis, 2008 economic crisis, and there's a demand for the raw materials, especially timber and trade, which was also banned from the sanctions. So they lost the raw materials, the Europeans, not the Myanmaris or the Myanmar government. So the youth on the president initiated three-pronged reform process. I could say that democratic transition, the ethnic peace process, and economic and social reforms. In the democratic reforms, what are the measures he has done under the democratic transition, which is obviously the political reform. The release of Aung San Suu Kyi, so that she could take part in the democratic process, and release of substantial political the prisoners, and also the easing the media censorship. So these are the measures he has taken and he has initiated and it has been implemented. But I look at this in a very critical perspective that these are all more symbolic rather than something concrete where they have done the concrete things, because I find I'm not an expert on Myanmar, but I'm looking from the political scientist point of view, to any transform to happen or anything, it has to be supported by institutions, and I find Myanmar lacks this institutional capacity to execute or further those reforms or economic reforms. So that is one thing I find it, that it seems more symbolic and rhetoric, where just release of Aung San Suu Kyi and the substantial number of. When it comes to the ethnic process, the composite dialogue process, including nationwide, all this ethnic process, so far even the ceasefire agreement signed, I think a couple of months back. I think that the tensions among the ethnic communities are not abated. I mean, I think it's still there. So the dialogue is going on. The government is leading the dialogue. Tatmadaw, somebody discussed the role of Tatmadaw, and it is very stubborn and rigid on setting the terms and conditions for the talks and dialogues. And which it is not the one or two entities. There are more dozen entities, ethnic entities, which is also involved in a dialogue process. There are multiple stakes and there's multiple stakeholders as well. So the question remains that to what extent, what are the compromises, and to what extent the Tatmadaw or the government, some kind of, give some concession and compromises in the dialogue process. It should be a two-way process. So that question remains a big question to that. So as for the political reform, as I said, that it's kind of
only 2 minutes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. So the release of Aung San Suu Kyi is also doesn't make any drastic change, or because she could not participate in she could not become a president and become a part of the things. As I discussed, the ethnic peace process, the role of the government, what the Tatmadaw and they're doing, the peace process, the dialogue is going on, but I don't think so any tangible results can be made or that would change the course of these things. So the EU assistance still continues despite all these things, though they have suspended sanctions and also, but the embargo still continues, especially the arms embargo. That is a negotiation now the government wants to. It is kind of incremental that the sanctions can be lifted with the kind of some positive response or the positive developments from the Myanmar government. So the government is also have to show that they have done this kind of this much, so that they want to kind of some concessions. Despite that, EU has promised a package of European 150 million euro for the Myanmar, assisting its development activities and infrastructure developments. And it has also increased its the aid from 2011 to 360 million euros, and it has been supporting many civil society organizations, more than 50 or more than a lot of organizations been funded and supported by the European Union in Myanmar, working on various issues. So the European Union approach, I could surmise that it's kind of a bottom-up approach rather than the other great powers where just top-down approach where you engage with the elites or the political elites. So it is kind of a more comprehensive, more inclusive, and also it's aimed for the long term. It may take another 10 years, or one cannot quickly judge and come to conclusion that impact of the European Union. This policy change, as we have seen successfully, because there was a skepticism in European Union, engaged with Iran. There was a skepticism that the European EU cannot, come out with any tangible results. But after 10 years, what we see is kind of some positive development. So this is the European Union approach to, when it comes to engaging with countries like Myanmar. So that differentiates the European Union from other countries, which I have already discussed. It is not driven by the geopolitical compulsions or imperatives. Perhaps India would benefit out of the more role by the European Union, because it may help India to balance China. This is my one view, that India should also be joining hands with the European Union in terms of engaging with Myanmar, especially for focusing on this infrastructure development and in the development assistance program. That could be. There are many ways that India is also be involved, working closely with the Western countries and the European powers. So the big question remains that to what extent the EU can leverage the current regime to expedite the reforms through the concession and compromises. That is a big question that, given the current situation of the European Union, which is facing the domestic crisis of this, to come out of this Eurozone crisis and Greek exit. And also the other question that, so though it is a new kind of approach used in the international politics that use postmodern policy of using this carrot and stick, and approach that whether it will lead to tangible results, that we have to wait to see. I think it is too early to judge or comment on the outcome of the European Union engagement with Myanmar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jagannathan, for your thought-provoking presentation. Yes, EU has been playing very important role in Myanmar. Things are indicating that their interest is not only for the business purpose, but also for the political purpose. I have seen that EU is preparing to have EU-ASEAN, the institute in Mandalay, my home city. Thank you very much. May I request my friend Dr. Key to make your presentation?
Thank you, Chair. So the title of my presentation is Situating Myanmar in the Evolving Geopolitics of the Bay of Bengal. What I'll try is to argue the fact that the perception and strategic value of the Bay of Bengal has been changing rapidly, and the role of Myanmar has been critical here. The issues that I'll discuss in this presentation is the whole question of the contours of the geopolitics in the Bay of Bengal, and trying to identify what are the factors that are driving this new geopolitics, and also locate the significance of Myanmar in this whole evolving context. To my mind, the whole new geopolitics in the Bay of Bengal began soon after post-Cold War. There are several factors why there has been a new trend in the geopolitics of the region. I would just list some of the factors here. I think India's look-east policy in response to economic crisis and strategic isolation during that time, India responded with its look-east policy, and to re-engage ASEAN and to economically, as well as to rebuild its strategic engagement with ASEAN. And this was also looked at by the ASEAN countries as an opportunity to access India's huge market. And this was also a time when China was strategically penetrating into Myanmar. It was also a time when the Western countries isolated the country, so this gave China an opportunity to penetrate into Myanmar. And the increasing Chinese influence in the region had pushed ASEAN to look for a counterbalance to counterbalance the Chinese influence, and thereby they were also interested to get India into the region. And interestingly, when India joined ASEAN and was upgraded as a full dialogue partner in 1996, and Myanmar joined ASEAN also in 1997. This has actually brought the ASEAN institutional border up to India. So that was also, a factor that has changed the whole perception of regions. Because since the World War II and throughout the Cold War, the Bay of Bengal region was seen as a fragmented strategic region, with half of the Bay of Bengal as seen as part of South Asia and half as part of Southeast Asia. So I think there was effort to see the Bay of Bengal as a single strategic region. And this was also a time throughout the 90s, Myanmar opened up its energy sector, and there was new oil and gas discoveries in that region. That has also increased the strategic profile of the Bay of Bengal. Myanmar, most of the big oil and gas in the companies began to explore oil and gas in Myanmar in the 90s, and Myanmar began to export gas to Thailand in 1998. This again further raised the strategic value of the Bay of Bengal. And I think another factor was the whole effort to build a Bay of Bengal community in the form of the BIMSTEC. This again reinforces the whole idea or notion that the Bay of Bengal as a community, as a single strategic system can be built. Unlike the traditional notion of seeing the region as two separate regions. If you look at the main key characteristics of the first phase of the new geopolitics, I see that, as I said, there was an effort to look at or to search for a single strategic space in the Bay of Bengal, and also there was a new strategic competition, suspicion emerging, largely because of the Chinese, increasing role in the region. And there was this, India was becoming concerned, the whole region was becoming concerned about the increasing Chinese role there. The second phase started about 2004. It started with, in 2005, the string of pearl concept was emerged when the American consultancy firm published its, this concept, which describes Chinese maritime strategy in the Indian Ocean, which says that Chinese ambitions is to build pearls around the, the Bay of Bengal to enhance its maritime strategy in the Indian Ocean, and Myanmar, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka were seen as pearls in this strategy. Then there was also this report about vanishing islands, which was first reported in 2006 in the Bay of Bengal. This again also brought the whole discourse of climate change in the Bay of Bengal, and since then we have been seeing reports about the islands disappearing beneath the rising seas in the Bay of Bengal. Then the other factor is certainly the non-traditional security issues. including natural disasters, the 2004 tsunami, 2008 Nargis, then Mala, Giri. There were several devastating cyclones and that we saw in this period. And this has again heightened the whole focus, the significance of the Bay of Bengal from another perspective, from a environmental issue perspective. There were other non-traditional security issues that were emerging during this time, which were piracy, maritime criminal activities, also smuggling. So this has all heightened the whole perception about the Bay of Bengal, and there were efforts, or rather in response to these increasing NTS issues, the region responded by increasing naval cooperation. So most of the naval cooperation in the Bay of Bengal since then, we have seen, were in response to natural disasters, and the focus has always been HADR. Whether it's Milan or the Malabar, or bilateral and trilateral exercises that we have in the Bay of Bengal, and also other naval cooperation such as joint patrols and even the military exercises with the Americans and Indians in the Bay of Bengal. Then you also had the US rebalance strategy announced during this period. To be, I think, fair, I think the US role in the Bay of Bengal has been slightly overestimated, I guess, because beyond some naval cooperation with some of the littoral countries, Americans have not really had any great role in the Bay of Bengal region. But with the announcement of the rebalancing strategy, the Bay of Bengal has, the significance of the Bay of Bengal has increased. And with Myanmar's opening, the Americans see this as a potential new partner in their new strategy. During this period, I think, again, there are some interesting features about this phase. We saw the intensification of the strategic competition between India, China, and the US coming in. And also, at the same time, we also see this kind of cooperation, necessitated by natural disasters in the region. Now, the third phase started sometime in the 2012, 2013, and I think it started with the rise of three major strong powers in Asia: Xi Jinping in China, Shinzo Abe in Japan, and Prime Minister Modi in India. All these leaders, soon after they were elected or came to power, they announced major economic and strategic initiatives. And Xi Jinping announced the One Belt, One Road strategy. Prime Minister Abe announced the Big B initiatives in the Bay of Bengal, and of course, Prime Minister Modi launched his Act East policy in Myanmar last year. Now, this announcement has further made or brought the focus sharply on the Bay of Bengal, because all these initiatives that the major powers of Asia have announced have actually intersected in the Bay of Bengal. Then you had the concept of Indo-Pacific which emerged during again this time, which again brought the focus on the Bay of Bengal because it was seen as the link between Indian and the Pacific Ocean. This whole Indo-Pacific concept describes these two regions as seen as one strategic system where the major powers' interests are interdependent and interlinked, and there are overlapping interests in this region. Then you had the, in 2012 and 14, you had the settlement of maritime boundary disputes between Myanmar and Bangladesh and between India and Bangladesh. This again was a very positive development, and that has again brought another dimension of focus of the international community at a time when you had this very difficult situation in other Asian waters, such as the South China Sea or the East China Sea. We are seeing here, countries are trying to solve their disputes peacefully through international legal process. I think that again has sent out a very positive message and encourage both the littorals as well as external players to come and develop, build infrastructure in the Bay of Bengal. Then, of course, regional connectivity infrastructure, a lot has been said earlier about this. But here again, I think whether you talk about ports, railways, corridors, I think again we are seeing a lot of focus in and around the Bay of Bengal in the past few years. I would again see two major characteristics in this phase. One is the growing competition to develop infrastructure, whether it's India, China, or Japan. The whole strategic, I think, intention or motive is to link the region to their own economies. Then, surely, the evolving geopolitics in the region, I think, has the potential to redefine the economic geography of the Bay of Bengal. Now, this, I don't have to go into this, a lot has been said already. I mean, you have the, the India has started coastal shipping services with Myanmar and Thailand and Cambodia. Then you have the Japan's Big B initiative. It has been referred to earlier. Then the SEZs, the whole corridors, southern corridors. China is pushing the southern corridors. Japan is pushing the east-west corridor. India is pushing the southern economic corridor. There's this Japan, China pipelines. You have the BCM economic corridor that will link China to India through Myanmar and Bangladesh. Then you have the Mekong economic corridor. It has been said already by others. I'll not go into the details now. So what are the major trends that we see from geopolitical trends that we see in the Bay of Bengal today? To my mind, there are two major trends that I see. One is cooperation. As I said, in response to natural disasters and also the increasing NTS issues in the Bay of Bengal, regional, both littorals as well as extra-regional players, they're increasingly looking for cooperation, naval cooperation, to tackle, to address these issues. And I feel that this trend is likely to grow in the coming years because NTS issues are likely to increase. And you have always the uncertainty about environmental issues, natural disasters in that region. So we might see this the trend towards cooperation, naval cooperation, gaining more momentum in the coming years. At the same time, I also see increasing strategic competition between